They say sibling rivalry fades with age, but that's not always true. I'm Lisa, 27, and 3 months ago, I accepted a coveted internship at a Fortune 500 tech company. It should have been a dream. The catch: my older brother, Brandon, works there. Actually, he doesn't just work. He's a mid-level manager with a solid reputation and a tightly pressed shirt to match. My arrival wasn't exactly celebrated. Growing up, Brandon always had a way of making me feel like I was trespassing in his world. If I got an A, he already had an A fluv. If I won a small art contest, he'd make sure the whole family knew he'd just won a science fair with regional press coverage. I used to think he was just competitive. Now I know better. On the outside, Brandon treated me with professional courtesy. Smiles in meetings, polite small talk. But something in his eyes always felt off, like he was waiting for me to slip. Then came the executive visit. Our department had 3 days to prepare. I pulled 2 all-nighters polishing a presentation I wasn't even allowed to give. But none of that mattered after the coffee incident. What I saw that morning in the break room changed everything, and the decision I made in that moment didn't just cost Brandon his job. It forced our entire family to finally face the truth. Brandon was the golden child. That wasn't just how it felt, it was how it was. From the time we were little, he wore the label like a crown. Straight A's, varsity athlete, student council president. My parents didn't need to brag, he did it for them. Every school awards ceremony turned into a Brandon showcase. And me? I was the background applause. The afterthought. I still remember the day I brought home a second-place trophy for the district art competition. I was in 7th grade. It was the proudest I'd ever been, until Brandon walked in with a robotics medal from the state science fair that same night. Mom barely looked at my trophy before asking Brandon what he had to say in his acceptance speech. At first, I thought it was just bad timing, but the pattern repeated, over and over. Anytime I achieved something, Brandon had already done something bigger, better, and louder. Worse still, he had this subtle way of downplaying anything that wasn't his. When I got into the honors program, he joked, "Wes, they're lowering standards now." When I landed a summer scholarship for creative writing, he said, "I didn't know they handed those out for hobbies." It wasn't just about achievements. It was attention. Presence. He commanded the room. I occupied it. And if I ever tried to step out of the shadows, Brandon would quietly nudge me back in. By high school, I started shrinking myself on purpose. I stopped telling my parents about my wins. I'd turn off the notifications for school announcements so I wouldn't see his name again on another list I hadn't made. I convinced myself I didn't care, that I was just different, more creative, less academic, quieter, safer that way. But deep down, I envied the way he fit so perfectly into the mold. I hated that I wanted the approval he soaked in like sunlight. College gave me the distance I needed. I chose a school 2 states away. Majored in marketing, joined clubs, and met people who didn't know Brandon existed. For once, I got to be just Lisa. No comparisons, no second place. But that peace didn't last. After graduation, when I applied for internships, one opportunity stood out: Nexus Stratagem, a tech consulting giant with prestige and perks. I applied not knowing Brandon worked there. I got the offer. Excitement buzzed in my chest, until my mom called. "Did you know your brother's been there for 5 years?" she said, like it was some kind of bonus prize. "He'll be able to help you settle in." My heart sank. Of course he was already there. Of course he'd already climbed the ladder. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't the same girl I used to be. I had grown, I had earned this. And maybe, just maybe, Brandon had to too. Maybe the past was behind us. But on my first day, I realized nothing had changed. He barely looked at me when we crossed paths in the lobby. At the orientation breakfast, he sat with the other managers while I tried to find a table that didn't feel like exile. And when we finally made eye contact in the hallway, he said only, "Try not to act like you know me too well." People talk. He smiled when he said it, like a joke, like a dagger. That week, I overheard him making a crack about nepotism hires in the break room. When I walked in, he didn't flinch. I thought I could handle it. I'd survived worse. But the old ache in my chest returned, like I was 12 again, standing next to his trophy shelf, clutching something no one cared about. Still, I kept my head down, worked late, made suggestions, got noticed by some senior associates. Brandon noticed too. And that's when things really started to shift. He began copying me on emails he never used to, offering feedback that felt more like sabotage, rewriting my reports with overly technical jargon to make them less readable. At first, I thought I was imagining it, until my team lead asked me why my tone had suddenly changed. Then came the day I was prepping slides for a pitch Brandon was leading. I spent hours refining them. When the time came, he presented them word for word, without ever mentioning my name. I wanted to believe it was corporate culture. Or forgetfulness. Or maybe he just didn't want to look like he was favoring me. But when he turned to me afterward and said, "Nice job not embarrassing me," I knew better. Brandon didn't see me as a sister. He saw me as a threat. It started with small things. Almost forgettable. Until they weren't. One morning, I walked into the shared office kitchen and found my name missing from the team coffee rotation. Everyone had a designated day to refill the pods, wipe down the counter, and restock the sugar packets. It was silly, really. But when I asked Jenna from HR about it, she blinked and said, "Weren't you reassigned to the client-facing team under Brandon? They have their own routine." That was news to me. I checked my inbox. Sure enough, a calendar invite had appeared, sent late the night before, moving me on to a special project, supervised directly by Brandon. No explanation. No input. Just transferred. When I confronted him, he shrugged. They needed someone who understands presentation structure. "I vouched for you." Vouched. The word hit wrong. It sounded like something you'd do for a criminal. Not a qualified intern. Still, I told myself it was a chance to prove myself. Maybe he was trying to help in his own twisted way. Maybe this was my shot. That optimism lasted exactly 4 days. The special project turned out to be a series of redundant tasks. Data entry, transcription, and formatting files that had already been formatted. When I asked if I could sit in on client calls or offer ideas, Brandon would say things like, "Let's walk before we run, okay?" Or, "You don't want to overstep. This place notices everything." He spoke like he was guiding me. But the guidance felt like a leash. And yet, in meetings, he never missed a chance to highlight my presence. "Lisa's still learning," he'd say with a smile. "She's great with colors." As if I were a child given crayons, instead of a marketing graduate with 2 internships and a capstone award. The real turning point came when I stayed late one Friday, determined to finish a deck before Monday's client presentation. I stayed well past 9 p.m. The office was a ghost town, except for Brandon. I passed by his glass office and saw him on a video call. He didn't see me, but I stopped when I heard my name. "No, she doesn't know anything yet. I've kept her off real work. Just make work stuff. She's not ready, too eager. Trying to prove something. It'll burn out soon." I stood frozen in the hallway, every syllable slicing deeper. When he finally ended the call and walked out, I was gone. I slipped out the side door and cried in my car. After that, I changed. No more waiting for permission. I started asking questions in meetings, offered feedback during brainstorms. I stayed professional and polite, but visible. Several team leads noticed. One of them, Madeline, head of strategic partnerships, pulled me aside after a pitch session. "You've got insight," she said. "Next time, speak louder. People are listening. Even if your brother isn't." Brandon noticed too. And his subtle sabotage got sharper. He deleted my name from a shared doc minutes before sending it to the VP. He forgot to invite me to a working lunch with our project team, then told me it had been a scheduling error. When I printed a client analytics summary, he reprinted his version with a different font and told people mine wasn't aligned with the brand voice. Every time I confronted him, he smiled like I was being paranoid. Relax, Lisa. It's a fast-paced environment. You need thicker skin. But it wasn't about skin. It was about power. I could feel it. Beneath the polished image, Brandon was unraveling. Then came the memo. It was a company-wide announcement. Executive site visit. Monday. The CEO herself was coming, along with the COO, the head of innovation, and a few corporate board members. Everyone was scrambling, polishing reports, rehearsing pitches. Even the office plants got a refresh. Brandon pulled me into his office the morning the news dropped. Listen, he said, shutting the door behind me. The execs are coming, and I'm leading the innovation demo. I nodded. I know. Madeline mentioned she's prepping content. He leaned against his desk, arms crossed. You're not presenting. Don't insert yourself. I wasn't planning to. Good. A pause. But I will need you to prep the visuals. Clean, simple, elegant. Just don't get artistic? I swallowed the retort in my throat. Sure. Also, he added casually, avoid chatting up anyone from corporate. They hate small talk, it's just better if you stay low-key. Translation: stay invisible. I walked out of that office knowing something was off, more than usual. His voice was tight. His smile stretched too thin. For the first time, he looked afraid. That weekend, I prepped the visual deck for his demo. I gave it polish, clarity, and edge. Then I saved a backup. Something in me didn't trust him not to delete it. Or worse, take credit again. When Monday morning came, the office sparkled. Fresh fruit trays, polished glass doors, and perfectly printed name tags. I dressed in my best, neutral slacks, a soft blouse, and hair back. Not flashy, not forgettable. And then I saw it Brandon in the break room, hunched over 2 coffee cups. He looked up just as I entered, and nearly jumped. Hey, he said too quickly. Didn't see you there. He held 2 identical cups. One was clearly mine. My name was scribbled on the side. The other, unmarked. What's going on? I asked. Oh, just grabbing some caffeine before the show. One for me, one for... He trailed off. Doesn't matter. He handed me the cup with my name on it. I took it. But something didn't feel right. His hands were trembling, and for the first time in years, I saw it in his face: guilt. That's when I made a decision. A quiet, dangerous, instinctive decision. I smiled and thanked him. Then, when his back was turned, I swapped the cups. Corporate visits always bring a certain electricity to the air. Fake smiles, overused buzzwords, and just the right amount of panic. But that Monday felt different. There was a tension humming beneath the polished professionalism. Everyone was dressed one level above their pay grade. Even the overworked receptionist looked freshly laminated. People weren't just excited. They were terrified. The executive team arrived at 9:02 a.m. sharp. Black SUVs, designer coats, clipboards, headsets. These were not just bosses. These were career makers, or breakers. Brandon greeted them at the elevators, overly enthusiastic. Welcome to our Seattle branch. We've prepared a brief walkthrough and a showcase of our new AI initiative. He sounded rehearsed. Too smooth. Too loud. I stayed back, observing from the edge of the bullpen. My heart raced, not from nerves, but from what I'd done 30 minutes earlier. My hands still tingled from the slap. My cup now rested on the counter, untouched. Brandon's. Drained. He hadn't even blinked as he chugged it. The group made their way through departments. Lauder, praise, posed photos. Brandon led with a constant stream of commentary, peppering in corporate lingo like synergy, pipeline clarity, and vertical scalability every 5 seconds. But something was off. By 10:00 a.m., his face had turned slightly red. His speech was still flowing, but faster. Too fast. His hands twitched at his sides, and he began tugging at his collar between sentences. When we reached the demo room, things got worse. Madeline and I had spent days polishing the slide deck. The room was dim. A massive screen flickered to life as Brandon took center stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice just a touch too loud, "this demo represents the cutting edge of our firm's innovation capabilities." The first 2 slides went smoothly. Then, mid-sentence, he blinked. Our firm's firmware, no. Firmness, forward-facing initiative." He shook his head. "Sorry. It's hot in here, isn't it?" A few chuckles. He pressed forward, but his pacing quickened. His words tumbled out like marbles. "We're, currently leveraging scalable modules for, multi-layered cross-integration of—" "Wait, can we back up a slide?" The slide hadn't changed. Silence. I caught Madeline's glance from across the room. Her eyes narrowed. Brandon wiped sweat from his temple, blinking rapidly. I'm fine," he said, unprompted. "Just a little coffee jitters, you know how it is." But no one laughed. He kept going, his words turned frantic, his pitch jumped octaves. At one point, he gestured so wildly he knocked over the remote control. When he bent to pick it up, he nearly lost his balance. "That's when I saw it," the CEO whispered something to her assistant. Then it happened. In the middle of describing a hypothetical market application, Brandon paused. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. He stared at the slide like it was written in Sanskrit. "Brandon," someone prompted gently. He blinked. Twice. "Sorry," he muttered. I lost the thread. Just need a sec." But the thread didn't return. Instead, he began laughing, at first softly, then louder. "I mean, what is cross-integration anyway?" he said, eyes wild. "What does that even mean? We say that all the time. Do we even know what we're talking about?" Silence fell like a curtain. A junior associate dropped her pen. The CO slowly stood. "Why don't we take a 5-minute break?" Brandon stumbled back from the screen muttering, "Yeah. Great. Breaks are great. I love breaks." He turned toward the door and missed the handle completely, bumping his shoulder into the wall. No one moved. I followed him out discreetly, trailing behind as he staggered toward the kitchen. He fumbled with the water cooler. His hand trembled as he reached for a cup, spilled it, and cursed under his breath. Then he turned and saw me. "You," he said, pointing. "You did something." "Me." I kept my tone neutral. "You changed something in that presentation. You messed with the transitions. Know the order. You're trying to sabotage me." "No, Brandon," I said evenly. "You're sabotaging yourself." His pupils were dilated. "His breathing is shallow." "What was in that coffee?" he asked, suddenly frantic. Was it you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He leaned against the counter, gripping the edge like it was the only solid thing in the room. "I just wanted one thing," he whispered. "One thing that was still mine." That's when Madeline walked in. She took one look at him and pulled out her phone. "We need HR and medical on the 2nd floor. Now." I backed away, letting them handle the scene. Within 15 minutes, Brandon was escorted out of the building. Not by security, but by our in-house wellness officer and an HR rep. A medic checked his vitals. Someone mentioned possible overstimulation, caffeine overdose, maybe something stronger. No one mentioned the coffee swap. No one had to. Later that day, the executive team resumed their tour. Without Brandon, I was asked to present a modified version of the innovation deck. Madeline stood beside me, nodding in support as I spoke. I didn't stumble. I didn't shake. I didn't try to prove anything. I just told the truth of our work. When it was over, the CEO shook my hand. "You handled that with grace," she said. I smiled politely. But inside, I wasn't sure what I had handled, or what came next. The next morning, I was called into HR, no subject line, no explanation. Just a calendar invite titled, "Meeting, Conference Room D." My stomach twisted. I didn't sleep well the night before, not because of guilt, but because I knew something had shifted. Permanently. When I arrived, Madeline was already seated at the end of the table, flanked by 2 HR reps and someone from corporate compliance. I felt like I was walking into a courtroom. "Lisa, have a seat," said Camille, the HR manager, with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We just have a few questions about yesterday's incident," added a man with a badge clipped to his belt. "Security, not legal, but close enough," I nodded slowly. "Okay." Camille folded her hands. "As you know, Brandon experienced what we're calling a health-related event during the executive presentation. Since then, there have been questions about me," I asked, keeping my tone calm. "Not necessarily," she replied quickly, "but your proximity to the situation and your familial relationship means we need to be thorough." Madeline spoke next. "Lisa, I was in the kitchen early yesterday morning. I saw Brandon preparing 2 coffees. A few minutes later, I noticed you had one in your hand, and he was drinking the other. Did you switch them?" There it was. I hesitated, just a beat too long. "I did," I said evenly. Camille leaned forward. "Why?" I looked at her, then at the others, choosing my words with surgical care. "I walked into the break room and saw Brandon holding 2 identical cups. One had my name on it. But when he noticed me, he jumped, visibly. His hands were shaking. He handed me the cup too quickly, and the look on his face. Something felt wrong. I didn't know what he'd done, but I didn't trust him. So yes, I switched them." The man from security scribbled notes. Camille's voice stayed neutral. "Do you have any reason to believe he tampered with your drink?" I nodded. "Yes. It wasn't the first time he'd tried to undermine me." Madeline cleared her throat. "We pulled the security footage." My breath caught. She turned a small laptop toward me and hit play. The timestamp showed 8:07 a.m., the break room. Brandon entered, alone. He took a small vial out of his pocket and unscrewed the cap. Then, carefully, he added a few drops into one of the cups, mine. Even from the grainy footage, it was unmistakable. He didn't even check if the room was empty. The room fell silent. Madeline's voice was tight. "We had the cup tested. The residue matched a high-dose caffeine concentrate, far beyond the safe threshold. Combined with adrenaline and nerves, it easily could have caused a panic attack, tremors, or worse." I swallowed. "Why would he do that?" Camille responded gently. "We were hoping you might help us answer that." I stared down at the table, then back up. "He's always needed to win, even when there was nothing to win." Camille leaned back, sighing. "For now, Brandon has been placed on administrative leave. There will be a full investigation, and likely, formal disciplinary action." I nodded. "Am I under review too?" "You're not in trouble," Madeline said firmly. "You showed remarkable restraint under pressure. But next time, Lisa, bring it to someone. Don't carry it alone." I exhaled slowly. "Understood." That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "Brandon, we need to talk." I didn't respond. The next day, he was waiting by the garage exit as I left the building. Dressed down, unshaven, but still wearing that old smirk that had haunted my childhood. "Wow. Straight to corporate star, huh?" he said. I didn't stop walking. "You drugged my coffee, Brandon." "I didn't drug it," he said quickly, falling into step beside me. "It was just caffeine. Like a boost. It wasn't poison. You put something in my drink without my knowledge." "That's enough," he scoffed. "You're acting like I tried to kill you. It was a stupid decision." "Fine. But now they're treating me like I'm some psychopath. I'm suspended. Legal's involved. They took my badge." "Maybe because you finally got caught," I said, stopping to face him. "You've been trying to sabotage me since the moment I stepped into that building." His expression hardened. "You don't get it. You weren't supposed to be there. This was my space. The one place where I wasn't living in your shadow." I blinked. "My shadow." He laughed bitterly. "Yeah. You think you're the underdog. You were always the one they coddled. Poor Lisa, the creative one. The delicate one. The one everyone felt bad for because she didn't have what I had." I shook my head. "No, Brandon. They felt bad for me because they saw what you did. They just didn't call it out." He looked away, jaw clenched. I didn't ask to be compared to you, I said. But you made me your rival. You wanted me to stay small so you could feel big. His voice dropped. I didn't want to lose everything. Then maybe, I said quietly, you shouldn't have risked everything. He stood there, silent. I turned to go. I hope you get help, Brandon. But I'm done. And I walked away. By the end of the week, Brandon was gone. No email, no announcement. Just erased. His name disappeared from the directory. His office was reassigned. A polite company, wide memo simply read, "Please welcome internal changes in our project leadership moving forward." But everyone knew. You don't get escorted out of a building and return as leadership. I was called back into HR the following Monday, expecting another round of questions. Instead, Camille greeted me with a warmer tone and a firm handshake. "We're extending your internship through the fall rotation," she said, sliding an official letter across the table. "With a promotion to junior strategy associate. Madeline personally recommended you." I blinked. "Seriously?" She smiled. "You handled yourself with integrity in an impossible situation. That doesn't go unnoticed here." I wanted to feel proud. Triumphant even. But all I felt was tired. That night I sat in my apartment, holding the offer letter in one hand and my phone in the other. There were 3 missed calls from my mother, 2 texts from my dad, and 1 message from my aunt that simply said, "Call your mother. She's upset and confused." I didn't call. Not right away. Because I knew what the conversation would be, and I wasn't wrong. When I finally drove home that Saturday, the air in the house was thick. Like someone had sealed the furniture in worry. Mom was in the kitchen, slicing fruit with unnecessary force. Dad sat stiffly at the table, nursing a cold mug of coffee. "I still don't understand why you didn't come to us first," Mom said, barely glancing at me. "What would you have done?" I asked. "Told me to be patient again? Told me Brandon didn't mean it?" My voice was calm, tired, honest. Dad sighed. "Lisa, he's your brother. He's been under pressure. He made a terrible decision. But what you did, it cost him everything." I stared at him. "What did I do?" "Hayes lost his job. His reputation. You didn't have to expose him like that." I let the words settle for a moment, then said, "You're right. I didn't have to. But I chose to. Because no one else ever has. Not once in my life has Brandon been held accountable." Mom sat down slowly, her expression softening. "He's not well. We think he's struggling mentally. The stress. The pressure to perform. Maybe you've always been the one to handle emotions better. But Brandon? Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Don't turn this into a pity arc. He didn't snap. He planned it. He measured the drops. That wasn't panic. That was strategy." Silence. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "We're not excusing it. But we can't just abandon him." "I'm not asking you to," I said quietly. "But you don't get to blame me for finally drawing a line." Mom's eyes were wet. "He says you humiliated him." I met her gaze. He humiliated himself. The weeks that followed were complicated. At work, I was gaining momentum. Madeline looped me into high-level meetings. A senior associate took me out for coffee to talk mentorship. People stopped seeing me as Brandon's little sister and started seeing me as a name in my own right. But at home, I was still the villain in half the family's eyes. Cousins sent passive-aggressive texts. An uncle left a voicemail saying, "You could have handled it more privately." My grandmother called and asked, "Is it true you poisoned him?" Only my aunt, Mom's sister, stood up for me. "You don't owe anyone guilt for surviving someone else's dysfunction," she said. "Brandon made his choices. And so did you?" But the hardest part, Brandon didn't just vanish. He started posting vague status updates on LinkedIn. Half-truths. Sometimes people close to you will sell you out for a title. Family isn't always loyal. Beware of those who smile in boardrooms but stab in break rooms. He never named me, but I was the only sister he had. The narrative was shifting. Quietly, subtly, he was painting himself as a victim, and me, as the traitor. I started seeing a therapist. Not because I felt unstable, but because I wanted a place where I didn't have to defend my sanity. I don't want to become hardened, I told her. I just want to understand why I feel guilty for doing the right thing. She nodded. Because for people raised in imbalance, speaking up feels like betrayal. Even when it's survival. That line stayed with me. 1 month after his termination, Brandon reached out again. A long email this time. No threats, no rage. Just a line near the end that said, "I lost everything. I hope you're proud." I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty. But because I knew what he really meant was, I lost control, and I blame you for it. And that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. He asked to meet me in person. The email was short. No drama, no guilt-laced jabs. Just, "Lisa, I'd like to talk." Just us, no accusations, no defenses. I owe you that much. Brando and I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, part of me wanted to scream, and a small, quieter part, the part still craving something like closure. Clipped, reply, and typed, "Okay. 1 hour. Neutral ground, you choose." He picked a park we used to go to as kids. Jefferson Heights, quiet, familiar, wide open space. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting on the far end of a bench, hands in his lap. His posture was slouched, almost apologetic. He looked older, eyes sunken, shoulders drooped. No pressed shirt, no company lanyard. Just a hoodie and jeans. He stood when he saw me but didn't move to hug me. A small relief. I sat. Left one seat between us. For a long minute, we said nothing. Just birds, wind, and the occasional crunch of a jogger's shoes against gravel. Then Brandon spoke. I've replayed it all in my head 100 times. The coffee. The look on your face when you walked into the break room. The way you looked at me when I fell apart in that demo. I didn't say anything. He nodded slowly. I messed up. Still, I waited. I wasn't trying to ruin you, he said finally. I was trying to make you falter. Just a little, long enough to remind everyone I still mattered. And what was I supposed to do? I asked quietly. Drink it? Stumble? Humiliate myself for your comfort? His face tightened. I wasn't thinking straight. Yes, you were, I said. That's the part no one's saying out loud. You were completely in control when you measured out whatever you put in that cup. That wasn't a breakdown. That was a decision. He looked away. I get it, Brandon. You felt threatened. For once, I wasn't shrinking in your shadow, but I didn't steal anything from you. I earned it. Every presentation, every late night, every time I showed up, you pretended I didn't exist. He swallowed hard. You always think I had it easy. Didn't you? He turned to face me. No. I had pressure, expectations. Everyone looked at me to be the example. To get it right. To keep performing. You were the one they protected. You were the one who said, "She's sensitive. Go easy on her." I let out a breath, half a laugh. They protected me because you never did. Brandon's face dropped. You called my writing a hobby. You erased my name off team projects. You forgot to tell me about meetings, then called me unprofessional. You told people I only got the internship because of you. His mouth opened, then closed again. You know what the worst part is? I said, voice low. I wasn't even trying to compete with you. I wanted you to succeed. I cheered for you. And in return, you watched me drown and handed me a heavier stone. The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't mean to become your enemy, he said at last. I just didn't know how to be your brother. I looked at him then. Really looked. And for the first time, I didn't see the version of Brandon I'd chased approval from. I saw someone lost. Cracked open by consequences. Human, and still dangerous. Do you want forgiveness? I asked. He blinked. I want to fix things. I nodded slowly. That's different. He waited. I don't hate you, I said. But I don't trust you. And I'm not going to pretend we're fine just because you finally feel bad. His eyes welled, but he didn't speak. Forgiveness isn't a reset button, Brandon. It's a process. You start by taking ownership, not just for what you did, but for the why. I'm in therapy, he said quietly. Twice a week. They think I have a pattern of narcissistic compensation, that I tie my worth too tightly to achievement and external validation. I tilted my head. Sounds accurate. He let out a short breath. I'm not asking for us to go back to being siblings who share everything. I just want to know, is there a version of the future where we talk again? I considered that. Let the idea sit for a moment. I don't know, I said honestly, but this, right now, was a start. He nodded. Fair. I stood. Take care of yourself. He looked up at me. You too. And for the first time in our lives, we parted without competition, just distance. And a kind of truth. The next morning, I sent an email to HR, declining an opportunity to relocate to corporate headquarters in New York. Instead, I asked to remain on the West Coast team. Madeline called me immediately. Are you sure? It's a big chance. I'm sure, I said. I'm not running toward prestige. I'm building something real. Here? She paused, then said, that's rare and smart. I smiled. Thanks. A week later, I was invited to a family dinner. I went, but with boundaries. I stayed 2 hours, avoided rehashing the past. When Brandon's name came up, I didn't flinch. I simply said, he's working on himself. So am I. Mom tried to hug me tighter when I left. I let her. But I also reminded myself my safety doesn't depend on their approval. Late that night, I journaled the sentence my therapist had once offered me. Some people heal by reconnecting. Others heal by releasing. I still didn't know which path Brandon and I would take. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the answer. A year can change everything. Or nothing. It was my aunt's birthday, her 60th. A full family gathering, the kind with fold-out tables, crockpots full of slow-cooked things, and disposable name tags for the cousins who barely remembered each other. I wasn't planning to go at first, but therapy had taught me the difference between avoiding someone and reclaiming my space. So I RSVP'd, and when the day came, I showed up early, brought lemon bars, wore a navy dress I liked, sat at a table near the window where the light was good and the noise was manageable. I didn't ask if Brandon would be there, but of course he was. He walked in 30 minutes after I did, slightly late, slightly hesitant. His hair was shorter now, neater. He looked thinner, quieter. He saw me and for a second, I saw panic flicker in his eyes. But I didn't look away. I didn't smile either. I simply nodded. He nodded back. That was enough. We didn't speak much. Just shared air, shared space. He sat at a table across the room, beside Mom, who looked visibly relieved that neither of us had bolted. I noticed small things. He didn't dominate the conversation the way he used to. He let people speak without interrupting. He complimented someone's potato salad. When our cousin's daughter dropped her drink, he got napkins without being asked. None of it made him a different person. But it made him present. Later, during the cake cutting, we ended up side by accident. I reached for a fork just as he reached for the napkins. Our eyes met. This time, he did speak. Lemon bars were really good, he said. I blinked. Thanks. They were store-bought. He smiled a little. Still good. I nodded. That was all. We stood there for a moment longer. No tension. No need to fill the silence with apologies or promises. Just understanding. Then I returned to my seat, and he to his. One table apart. When the party wound down, I helped clean up, gathered plates and folded chairs. Mom hugged me at the door and whispered, I'm proud of you. I didn't ask for what. I didn't need to. On the drive home, I thought about all the versions of myself that had existed over the last few years. The younger sister who bent to make room, the intern who guessed her every word. The woman who made a second decision in a break room, the survivor. The boundary builder, the one who no longer needed to win, just to be seen for who she truly was. Not in comparison. Not as someone's sister, just Lisa. Forgiveness never arrived with a grand speech. No tearful confessions. No Instagram quotes. It came in small, quiet moments. In a lemon bar. In a shared nod. In the fact that I no longer flinched when someone said his name. I hadn't forgotten what happened. I wouldn't. But I had stopped carrying it like a wound. Because healing isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about choosing to stop bleeding. So if you ask me today, do I forgive him? Yes. But not for him. For me. Because I deserve peace. Because I earned freedom. Because letting go isn't weakness, it's power.